Well, for the next hour and change, Dr. Steve Pieczenik is our guest. He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Senior Policy Planner under Secretaries Henry Kissinger, Cyrus Vance, George Shultz, and James Baker. Dr. Pieczenik continues to consult the Department of Defense. He received a Council on Foreign Relations CFR Fellowship, where he was recruited by Lawrence Eagleburger as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Management. In the position, he was created the Office of Combat Terrorism, the Family Liaison Office. He recognized the medical department within the State Department and merged and reorganized the Department of Cultural Affairs and the U.S. Information Agency into one organization, the International Communications Agency. Dr. Pieczenik is the author and creator of 26 New York Times bestsellers. He's the advisor to Tom Clancy. That's how Clancy knows all that stuff. His experiences in government and international crisis management were the basis of Tom Clancy's characters Jack Ryan and Richard Clark. And you can go to IMDb and see that he's listed as executive producer on many of those big films. We're not going to show you his photo. His photo's not known. I mean, he was really an interesting type, psychiatrist. A lot of times you find those type of guys right up at the top of black ops, psychological warfare. I did more research on him. I mean, I knew who he was 9+ years ago when I interviewed him, and it really blew me away how much he doesn't toot his horn. In fact, looking around here in my stack, I'm looking for my London Telegraph article. U.S. envoy admits role in Aldo Moro killing, the former Italian prime minister, overthrowing governments. I mean, he is Jack Ryan and then some, that character. That's why we've got Harrison Ford's image up there as Jack Ryan today, since we don't have a photo of a Dr. Pieczenik. This is the ultimate guy to get on to analyze the black op we saw Sunday, the disinfo, the cartoonishness of it. He comes on air and tells us that, yes, 9/11's an inside job, is ready to testify to a federal or state grand jury on the top general at the time that was in the military, that, yes, it was an inside job. They stood down. It was a black op. Now, of course, I've got the local footage of the police saying, get back, they're going to blow up Building 7, and the firefighters about the molten steel and the blast charges going off, the free fall. I mean, the NORAD stand down, the Cheney order. I mean, people say, where's the evidence? There's too much evidence. It hides in plain view. But what a breaking news for him to say this here. This is the co-author of Tom Clancy's books, ladies and gentlemen. This guy, untold wealth, untold success, big movies. Why would he be doing this? Because he cares, folks, because we're so down the line now. America is collapsing. I've got the financial stack of news here. 1 in 7 in the U.S. receive food stamps, Wall Street Journal. Stocks sink, led by energy, dollar slump. Dollar now, they're reporting at its all-time low since 1941. Internet police, open calls to start shutting down freedom of speech. Average price of gas hits $4. Chicago breaks $4.44. The White House secretly pressuring newspapers not to even make unflattering remarks about the president and his wife. Total manipulation behind the scenes. Now the official story is literally falling in on itself right now. I listened to national talk radio, local talk radio, liberal, conservative, last night and this morning. I went to bed at 1, got up at 5, nothing but full spectrum, computer, TV on the background, radio. About 70% of the callers are calling in saying, I'm a liberal, I like Obama. They're showing they're not being political, but I think this was staged, and I don't believe it, and I'd heard he'd been killed many times. It was dead years ago. Next, I'm a conservative, and he's trying to get political points with this. Where's the body? Why are they changing the stories? All over the map. Now, that's 70%. We're seeing record Facebook accounts being deleted, MySpace, people being knocked off major news site comments where they normally allow dissent. The system is scared to death right now, and I can officially tell you this blew up in their face. Now, I want to go to Dr. Pieczenik here in just a moment because he doesn't want to toot his horn, but I mean, if he could, just people know how serious, because you can just Google his name. I spent over an hour last night just into the government overthrows, the black ops, the running the Taliban against the Russians, just, I mean, just you name it. This guy makes E. Howard Hunt look like a schoolboy. And it goes on. And of course, Ethan Hunt, that's the name of the guy in Mission Impossible, and they admit that's the character of E. Howard Hunt. We got the deathbed confession here first of them pulling the trigger on JFK. Top U.S. government insider, bin Laden died in 2001. 911, a false flag. Top U.S. government insider, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, a man who held numerous different influential posts under 5 different presidents, but under the Secretary of State under 3, still works for the Defense Department. Shockingly told Alex Jones' show yesterday that Osama bin Laden died in 2001 and that he was prepared to testify in front of a grand jury on how top general told him directly that 9/11 was a false flag inside job. I mean, this is the kind of stuff can get us killed, folks. Pieczenik cannot be dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. He served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under 3 administrations, Nixon, Ford, Carter, while working under Reagan and Bush Sr., and still works as a consultant for the Department of Defense, a former U.S. Navy captain, went as high as colonel, I believe, before he got out. Pieczenik achieved 2 prestigious Harry C. Solomon Awards at the Harvard School as he simultaneously completed his Ph.D. at MIT. Recruited by Lawrence Eagleburger as Deputy Assistant Secretary for State Management, Pieczenik went on to develop the basic tenets of psychological warfare. This is from the Pentagon. The basic modern tenets of psychological warfare, counterterrorism strategy, and tactics for transcultural negotiations. That's the anthropology, sociology, for the U.S. Department of State, military and intelligence communities, and other agencies of the U.S. government, while also developing foundational strategies for hostage rescue that were later employed around the world. Pieczenik also served as senior policy planner under Secretaries Henry Kissinger, senior policy planner Cyrus Vance, George Shultz, these are the top kingmakers, James Baker, and worked for George W. Bush's re-election campaign against Al Gore. His record underscores the fact that he is one of the most deeply connected men in intelligence circles over the past 3 decades. He's Jack Ryan, folks. It just goes on and on. This is insane. And everything he says fits into my research and all the other experts I'm talking to. Hamid Gul's agreeing, former head of Pakistani intelligence, General Gul, Webster Tarpley, Wayne Madsen, NSA. But I know I'm ranting, sir. I apologize. I want to get into some of the other issues you wanted to cover today, but since we talked 24 hours ago, or 22 hours ago to be technical, this is clearly blowing up in their face. Do you agree, and how dangerous are these cornered rats now?
Well, I think, when you tell a lie, you're going to unwind that lie by the very fact that you've created a lie. The nature of creating a lie in psychological warfare is that you have to be consistent, make sure that all the details are intertwined and are credible. It's almost like a movie. So you got to think of the President of the United States, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, who, by the way, his father was a publicist for the William Morris Agency, and in the intelligence community, it's not an accident that you have this entirely contrived story. It's not credible. It's just like you had Disneyland with a key character who was already dead. And in order to reaffirm the storyline, that is to make sure that the President of the United States looked good, a man like Axelrod, all his advisors, including Obama himself, who's particularly suited to the lie, distortions, and deception because that's how he came to power. That's how George Bush Jr. comes to power. He sits down with a bunch of his own cronies. They sit down in groupthink, which you talked about before on your radio. Every one of the national security advisors who have their roles there because they're bequeathed and they're sycophants to the president. They're all kowtowing down, come together, and create this fictional story in psychological warfare that makes no sense. And many of the present people in psychological warfare were never trained 20, 30 years ago because they didn't understand the psychology, they don't understand the anthropology, they don't understand that the American public, you do not psyops the American public. That was a rule of thumb that we had under 4 to 5 presidents, that if you tried to psyops the American public, and it broke when you had George Bush Jr., when he created the psychological warfare, and then created the 9/11 through deception, distortion, false flag, stand down, And then we had, before him, we had Lyndon Baines Johnson. It goes on both sides when he created distortion of a false flag in the Gulf of Tonkin. We went into the war in Vietnam, and we had FDR, as Donald Rumsfeld stupidly accused and said that if anybody like Pieczenik is accusing the Republicans of creating 9/11, Rumsfeld said this on public, September 12th. 2011, he said, 2001, he said, Steve Pieczenik, if he accuses us, the Republicans, of 9/11, then we have to accuse Franklin Roosevelt of doing a stand-down. Well, of course I accused him of doing a stand-down because Paul Wolfowitz, the neocon, Salme Khalilzad, Frank Fukuyama, you had Dennis Ross, you had Richard Pearl, and you had Scooter Libby, all trained at the University of Chicago under Woolstetter. And what was their topic? Stand down in the false flag in Pearl Harbor at the University of Chicago when I was at MIT. So what happens now? What happens now when you've distorted the story and you can't get a consistency, just as we saw in George Bush Jr., which was, well, we have weapons of mass destruction. Suddenly there's a reality testing. There is no weapons of mass destruction. Then suddenly the military, our formidable military, our generals, and our Army generals in particular are forced to change their intelligence in order to be consistent with the White House. Well, thank God for a lot of our CIA operatives who were not on contract, who had been career and refused to listen to Bush Jr. and to the bullying of Cheney. But today, unfortunately, 80% of our CIA now are mercenaries. They do not have analysis intel. They're really they're detailed off from special forces. And
well, sir, that's what I want to stop you, Doctor, and continue. But that's what Ray McGovern. I don't know if you knew him, but he was, the morning briefer for Reagan and Bush Senior. Did you know him?
No, I knew of him. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, Ray says the same thing. He says they can't even do real national security assessments anymore because it's all la-la land. And once you put a psyop out into the public, the way the human brain works and all individuals being limited in their perception, it then is taken back and received by your own system, and it basically, for lack of a better word, makes the military-industrial complex drink their own Kool-Aid.
Well, it's not only the military-industrial complex. By the way, it's very important for the public to understand this. I am not a hero. I'm not this great individual. I'm just a simple American who was grateful for the benefits I was given and earned in terms of the ability to serve my country and at the same time be in the only country where I could criticize my own president and still work for them and be so loyal to my country because I was willing to go online and particularly serve my military, our Army generals in particular, the Army colonels, and be teaching at the War College every year. That's a privilege for me.
No, I understand, Dr. Pieczenik.
Alex does, but I have to understand the public. I'm not some superhero. I'm the same guy that your father is, who's a dentist or a mechanic out there, or an Army lieutenant or a junior officer, because they stood for something they believed in. I am tired of the American public being told these lies. I thought it would stop with 9/11. Now we have Obama. Now let's get back to the issue. What happens when the PSYOPs, which was poorly constructed...
You were talking about where they get their CIA people and that most of the intelligence is run by private mercs.
Correct. They get the intelligence people from all the military-industrial complex, L3 Communication, Northrop Grumman. Any of these companies around the Washington Beltway will provide intelligence for you right away because they want those contracts. Now, remember, America, and particularly the Alex Jones audience, supporting our national security does not mean supporting our military-industrial complex. It is not the same thing. They are out of control. They have been hogs that need to be slaughtered. I will quote one of my most favorite presidents, who unfortunately I was too young to serve, but I did always admire him, and that was General Eisenhower, who warned us when he left, beware of the military-industrial complex. He repeatedly said that. This is a great man who was exceedingly modest, who was exceedingly careful of the American national security. And every week, he literally, Alex, would call up the Pentagon to make sure the generals didn't blow out their staff or promote things and create units that didn't exist. That's the type of generals we had and people who cared about a country. We don't have that now.